that's been very welcoming by the people of San Miguel that have been here before us. But it's a great city that has given birth to just a number of progressive organizations, help organizations from expats and people around the world that want to give back not only to this community but to the world. With us this afternoon is Yolanda Milan and Dylan Terrell. Yolanda works with the center. She's one of the key people at the Saturday Organic Market and does a lot of work out in the campo in the effort to build cooperatives as a model for economic balance and justice within this particular state. She's also been to Cuba, where she's worked with the several organizations in Cuba in their efforts to introduce cooperatives to their economic model. And Dylan works with Caminos de Agua, which is becoming a very important organization within San Miguel as we face many issues about water usage, both now and definitely in the future, and the quality of our water and the future of how we allocate water. And so, without further ado,
excuse me,
do you have preferences? Who's going to speak?
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre, como dijo Peter, es Yolanda Millán y trabajo en Global Justice y también estoy en una cooperativa que se llama Impulso Verde y pues la idea de esta reunión es poderles hablar a ustedes acerca de las organizaciones progresivas o organizaciones distintas.
My name is Yolanda. I work with Global Justice, and I also work with a collective called Green Impulse, or Impulso Verde.
Y estoy en esta reunión para hablarles acerca de sistemas de organizaciones progresivas, diferentes a lo que conocemos.
So I'm here today to talk about different systems of organization.
Bueno, les voy a hablar primero acerca de lo que yo hago en Global Justice. Mi labor es en el ámbito de estudios. Yo doy capacitaciones, pláticas sobre lo que es el cooperativismo.
So I'll start first by talking about Global Justice. What I do is capacity trainings.
Sobre el conocimiento del cooperativismo.
Surrounding the idea of cooperativism.
Y esto va dirigido a personas. La mayor parte he dado estas pláticas en las comunidades rurales.
This is mainly directed to people in the rural communities.
Pero también ahora estoy dando esta plática a 2 grupos de mujeres, cada grupo de 10 mujeres cada grupo.
And I'm also now giving this to 2 different women's groups, 10 women per group.
Y la idea es que la gente joven, mayor, como sea, conozca el sistema cooperativista.
And so the idea is that everyone, young people and old, understand the system of cooperativism.
Que es un sistema en el cual se actúa democráticamente.
So it's a system that acts democratically.
Funciona también la economía solidaria.
And also using economía solidaria.
Y sobre todo es el trabajar la colectividad juntos en un proyecto.
And more than anything else, it's about working together collectively in a project.
Donde el grupo pueda sentir y creer que ser parte de una cooperativa es ser tanto el empresario como el trabajador.
And so the idea is so that everybody who works together within in this cooperative manner, everybody feels the same from the owner of business to the people working there.
Y también algo muy importante, En el cooperativismo, este sistema, lo más importante son las personas dentro de la cooperativa y fuera de la cooperativa. Que lo más importante dentro del cooperativismo son las personas que están en la cooperativa y también a la comunidad.
So the most important aspect of all this are the people that are within the cooperative as well as the community.
Y es muy diferente este sistema a cualquier empresa privada, porque en una empresa diferente lo que rige es el capital, es el dinero. En el cooperativismo lo importante es la gente.
So this is very different from a traditional business, because in a traditional business, the main goal is profit. But with this idea of cooperativism, the main goal is the people.
Actualmente me gusta mucho mi trabajo porque escucho a los grupos de mujeres que quieren emprender algo.
So right now I really like my work because I'm listening to the women, and these are women that really want to learn something new.
Y a través del conocimiento que yo les doy, de trabajar todas juntas en un ambiente de cordialidad y en donde todas valen lo mismo.
And so this idea of everybody working together and everybody is worth the same and everything is worth the same.
Aprenden la importancia de lo que es la organización interna.
So they understand the importance of what is the internal organization.
La decisión colectiva.
The collective decision.
También aprenden que tenemos que tener una visión de qué es lo que queremos.
And so that we also understand the collective vision of what we want.
Y aprendemos que a ver nuestras debilidades, nuestras amenazas, y también aprendemos a ver nuestras aptitudes en el grupo.
So we also learn to understand our weaknesses, the things that threaten us, as well as our aptitudes and the things that make us stronger.
Y lo más importante es que a partir de ese taller todas las mujeres empiezan a empoderarse y empiezan todas a opinar.
And so the great thing about after these workshops is that all the women begin to have a shared sense of power, and also they all begin to have their own opinions within the group and share them.
Sí. Ahora en este tiempo estoy dando dos talleres. Uno es de unas mujeres que se hacen llamar cuidadoras.
So right now we're doing two different sets of workshops. One is with a group of women called cuidadores, which is like to take care of.
Y estas mujeres lo que quieren es organizarse para ofrecer el servicio de cuidar a personas enfermas, incapacitadas, de la tercera edad.
And so with these women, the idea is to organize themselves to give services to the elderly, people with disabilities, and things of that nature.
Y es interesante porque ellas mismas ven cuáles son las necesidades y los conocimientos que deben de tener aparte del cooperativismo.
And so what they're seeing within their own group are the different knowledge sets that they need to do this work.
Ahora estamos solicitando para este grupo el conocimiento de geriatría, nutrición. Geriatría es el cuidado de las personas mayores. Entonces, ahora ven que deben de aprender los conocimientos de geriatría, nutrición, Alzheimer, cosas que llegan a personas de determinada edad. Entre esos son varios otros conocimientos que son importantes para ellas.
So right now they're bringing the focus on geriatric care and knowledge set, nutrition, Alzheimer's, and various other knowledge sets.
Entonces pongo ejemplo de este grupo porque me doy cuenta que a partir de lo que ellas empiezan a conocer, de que deben organizarse, de que deben de ver muchas cosas en el interior, ellas mismas empiezan a darse cuenta de las necesidades de otros conocimientos para que su cooperativa funcione adecuadamente.
So a good example of what's going on right now is that within these groups they're starting to see within their own work other things that they need to that they need to learn, and so they're identifying those different knowledge sets that they need to acquire within their own work right now and identify.
Y lo más interesante es que a partir de una idea que ellas tienen, empiezan realmente a trabajar con seriedad y sobre todo con mucha esperanza esa empresa que quieren formar.
And so with this, they begin to work. Que
empiezan a trabajar, empiezan a descubrir sus ideas y eso les da, les anima a seguir dando seriedad para formar esa empresa.
So they're discovering their own ideas, and this kind of gives them the force behind improving their own enterprise.
En el pasado han tomado este taller grupos de mujeres en comunidad. Una de ellas se llama las rancheritas, que elaboran tapetes.
So before they had a group called las rancheritas, que hicieron tapetes.
Que ellos elaboran tapetes.
That worked on making rugs.
Y a partir de este taller de cooperativismo trabajaron diferente y ahora tienen también un proyecto de turismo rural.
And so behind this, they started discovering ways of working differently, and now they've developed a rural tourism enterprise.
Ahora ellas venden sus productos en el Tiangus orgánico TOSMA.
And so right now they're selling their goods at the organic Tiangus every Saturday.
Ajá. Y otro grupo es hace muchos años una cooperativa de adolescentes, se llama Ojalá Niños.
And so another group is Ojalá Niños, which has many years in existence here.
También de una comunidad y ellos tomaron este curso y empezaron a trabajar también de manera diferente.
So this is a group from another community. They took this course and they started forming their own ideas after this course in their own initiative.
Y así en el pasado he dado este conocimiento a otros grupos de comunidades y aquí mismo en San Miguel.
And so in the past, I've given these workshops to other groups, other youth.
Ahora, como cooperativa, Impulso Verde es la cooperativa que está administrando el Tiangus orgánico.
So the southern one is the Impulso Verde, and this is the group that's organizing and coordinating the Tiangus orgánico every week at the TOSMA.
Sí. Y la idea es que todas las personas, pongo ejemplo del Tiangus orgánico, que un día todas las personas que están vendiendo ahí crean en el cooperativismo y puedan ser parte de la cooperativa.
And so the idea is that every stand at the Saturday market is involved with this idea of the cooperativism and is involved in the idea behind Impulso Verde.
Ahora voy a hablar un poco de lo que es TOSMA.
Now a little bit about TOSMA.
TOSMA es un mercado orgánico aquí en San Miguel de Allende, en el cual están 85 expositores.
TOSMA is an organic market here in San Miguel, and right now there's 85 stands.
Y en el cual se trabaja a partir, tenemos diferentes categorías dentro del tianguis.
And so we have different categories within the market itself.
Vegetales, procesados, artesanos, medicina tradicional, organizaciones civiles.
Non-governmental organizations, vegetables, processed foods, traditional medicine.
Y ONGs.
Sí,
okay, ahí está Caminos de Agua.
Sí.
Sí.
We're there too sometimes.
Estamos ahorita en el Tiangus orgánico aplicando para la certificación participativa.
So we're working right now to have a participatory certification program.
La idea de este tianguis es que un día, tal vez, no sé, 4 o 5 años, todos los que participamos en TOSMA lleguemos a la calidad de orgánico.
So the idea is within the next 4 to 5 years that everybody that participates within the market reaches the point of being fully organic.
Muchos compañeros que vienen de comunidades a vender sus productos, sus vegetales, en fin, están en esa transición para poder aplicar como orgánico.
So many of the local producers that come from the small rural communities that sell at the Saturday market are in this transition period of moving from the old ways into organic, which are the old ways.
Por supuesto, bajo las leyes del país que ahora está tomando SAGARPA.
So right now this is under, for the national legal system is under SAGARPA,
Que es, en México es la Secretaría de Agricultura aquí en el país.
which is the agricultural secretary in Mexico.
Contamos también dentro de TOSMA con un comité de certificación participativa.
So we're also working on the participatory certification program.
Es decir, que este comité se encarga de hacer visitas a todos los compañeros para ver cómo estamos elaborando las cosas y ofrecer una garantía al consumidor.
So this is a committee of people that are going out to all the different producers and actually reviewing the process of the production so that they can make recommendations and make sure that they can make the recommendations to the consumers that this is actually organic or in the process.
Pues esas dos labores que yo hago, tanto mi trabajo en Global Justice como en Impulso Verde, que es TOSMA, pues demandan mucho mi tiempo y conocimiento también, aprendizaje.
So these are my two, the two things that I'm doing, Impulso Verde and Global Justice, and that demands a lot of my time and a lot of my experience.
Hace poco, en el pasado he viajado a Cuba durante 3 ocasiones y en este último viaje que tuve me doy cuenta que en el país de Cuba están también tratando de impulsarse este sistema cooperativista que ya tiene años.
So she's also traveled to Cuba 3 times in recent years, has been noticing that they've also been pushing forward with the same idea of organization with cooperativism.
Y ahora por parte de Global Justice pensaríamos que sería interesante que podamos enseñar en Cuba, mostrar cómo hacemos aquí en México nuestros talleres de cooperativismo a las comunidades y empezar a intercambiar experiencias e ideas entre Cuba y México sobre el sistema cooperativista.
And so one idea is to share our experiences that we've had with the system here in Mexico with Cuba and start a system of interchange between the different experiences we've had in communities here and communities there.
A través de mi experiencia me doy cuenta que a la gente en México y creo también en Cuba le cuesta trabajo pensar en este sistema cooperativista donde todos somos iguales, todos decidimos y todos estamos en la colectividad de un bien común.
And so she's noticed that here in Mexico as well as in Cuba, it's a hard sell. This idea that everybody is equal, everybody shares everything, and everybody makes collective decisions. It's not an easy transition.
Y pues es lo que les puedo decir del trabajo que yo hago. Y yo creo que este sistema cooperativista, así como lo que estamos haciendo en Global Justice, pues es tratar de crear, dar conocimientos para crear una economía diferente a lo que ya conocemos con el sistema globalizado.
So what we're trying to do here within Global Justice is we believe that this system of cooperativism is an alternative way to the traditional global economy that we're trying to present to the world. And this is what I can share with you about my work right now.
Y ya para terminar, como se darán cuenta, Caminos de Agua está en el Tiangus orgánico. Mi compañero Miguel también, con el proyecto del Multitrueque, también tienen presencia en el Tiangus orgánico.
And also, my organization, Caminos de Agua, has a presence in the organic market, as well as Miguel with a multi-barter system. He has a presence there as well.
Y la idea es que entre todos podamos unirnos y crear espacios alternativos, espacios donde podamos generar una economía diferente y también un conocimiento muy diferente, dando el bien y tratando de servir a la gente de la comunidad, tanto rural como aquí en San Miguel.
And so the idea is that we can all work together to create an alternative economy within ourselves, within these groups, to offer a different type of economy within the rural communities as well as within our own groups here.
Y de mi parte, eso les comparto porque si sigo hablando no voy a permitir hablar a los compañeros.
So I'll leave it there for now, just so I can give me a chance to.
I think we've got our third speaker, Miguel.
She's so young.
Miguel and his daughter.
She's Valentina. Well, my name is Miguel. I am part of the Ayotzinapa group here in San Miguel, and I am part of the Colectivo Amanatli. The Colectivo Amanatli is it's a project of create community. Some people think that it is Amanatli collective. It's about to create a kind of Tiangus of exchange, an exchange Tiangus, but this is not the real project. The real project is it's an educational project. The first time this group get together was because of the Ayotzinapa students. I think that right now everybody knows the story about the students. We were very sad, very angry, and that's the reason we start to be in meetings. But after a time, we understood that it was very necessary to make a proposal as a society, not just the demonstration. Demonstration is very necessary. We need to raise our voice to say which is not correct. But this is, well, we believe that we have the capability to do more. When we start to analyze the problem, the situation, we understood that the situation is very complex. The current problem in the world, because it's a global problem, not just in Mexico, not just in San Miguel. It has a lot of phases: the economics, politics, education, the culture. And a small group cannot change the whole situation. We don't have all the knowledge, all the skills to change everything. But we decide to take or to attack one phase of this whole problem. And we choose the economics. But we saw that one of the contributors to the problem is that the social connections are losing. So we need to create again this link between the people, because in the capitalistic system they say something which is a lie, that they make us believe that when you have money in your pocket, you are independent. Sometimes we believe that because we have enough money in the pocket, we don't need the rest of the people. But this is not true. What we are trying to create with this Amanatli collective is to create a community. What does it mean? To be friends. It means to be friends. When you care about your neighbor, about your friends, you're not going to be quiet when there's an injustice from the government, from any person. You will raise your voice when you care. An example of this, or a negative example of this, is when you live in a big city, you can die and nobody will notice until you sting. And that happened because nobody cares. And you are surrounded by hundreds of people. What we want, we believe that if we create those links, we rebuild those links, we will be able to create a different reality. So we propose this Amanatli collective, which is it's about to create spaces where people can go, take the things they can produce, or take the knowledge or the skills they have to exchange directly with the people of the community. The solidarity economics is based in one idea. This idea is how can I cover the needs of my community with my work? When you think like that, it's not about just to sell stuff. It's about to give to your community. And because you are giving something to your community, you have the right to take something back. So we are promoting the exchange, and the exchange already happened in spaces like TOSMA. But the other thing that we are pushing is the use of this solidarity coin or currency. One of the benefits of using this currency is that we are creating networks of people who's producing something. Because if you're part of this community, of this network, it's very logical that you are going to choose to buy or to exchange your goods, your skills, your products with someone who is part of the community. And one another thing which is good with this system is that the wealth that we are creating stays in the community. We are creating a local economy. And the idea is to create cells, points where you can do this exchange, several points on the city. And if we create enough points, one day we will be able to do not use the local currency or the official currency, pesos or dollar or whatever, because there's another problem with the official currencies. Every day there are variations, devaluations, and we can do nothing to stop them, because the devaluation happens in Wall Street, and what is Wall Street? It's a casino. Someone is speculating with everything, with the work every person does, and by speculation they get super wealthy, super rich, and we think it is not fair that our economy depends of a casino. So we are trying to create a different alternative. Well, this is what we do. I don't know if you have questions or something.
Maybe what we'll try to do is finish up with our last speaker, and then we'll open.
Okay.
Do you have time to stay?
Yes, sure.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Dylan Terrell. I'm Executive Director of Caminos de Agua. Up until January of this year, we were known as Cadiz, Mexico, so maybe you've heard that name around. We've been here for about 6-7 years officially. I guess on paper, what we do is we develop low-tech but proven technologies to deal with regional water issues. So different filtration technologies, rainwater harvesting systems, things like that. It's not really the main thing I'd like to talk about. I'd like to more talk about why we need these technologies in the first place and kind of what's going on with our regional water situation. It's a bit of a, well, anyway, I'll just go into it. I'm not really sure how to start. I always struggle with how to communicate this information and really the severity of what's happening throughout not just San Miguel, but our entire watershed. So the region that we work in, we use regional borders, watershed borders essentially. So we use the two sub-basins, the Alto Rio Laja and the Laguna Seca, which are also collectively known in some parts as the watershed of the Independence watershed. And so this is 7 municipalities in the northern part of Guanajuato State. San Miguel is the southernmost point, and we work mostly in the northern communities where issues are a little bit more difficult. I guess I don't even know where to start most of the time, but I guess I'll just use an example that kind of defines a lot of what's happening in one small community. So recently, over the past 6 months, we've been working with a community called San Antonio de Lourdes, which is about just an hour drive up the highway here, passing Dolores and going off to the right towards San Luis de la Paz. It's really close within our watershed. We all share the same water resources. Their well dried up about 7 or 8 years ago, so they've had no water access. When we were there just a few months ago, we were at the kindergarten, and they told us that the bathrooms at the kindergarten hadn't had running water for the past 3 weeks because they have to literally go out to neighboring communities, to neighboring water deposits, collect water on their trucks, bring it back to the community for their own use in their homes, as well as for use in the schools, for the church. There's an elementary school and a kindergarten there, a couple hundred students in total between the two. And so for us, that was really disconcerting, really defeating. We'd actually been involved with this community for several years, and so we had tested the water quality of those deposits that they were bringing in, and it was about 15 times above the limit for fluoride and about 9 times above the limit for arsenic. I'll talk about what that means later, but it's just essentially toxic water. So not only do they not have water because the well went dry, they're literally trucking it in on their own pickup trucks. So it's incredibly expensive water. You have to figure in the deterioration of their vehicles, the gas it costs for them to drive it from a neighboring community, and on top of all that, it's also probably the most toxic water in the entire region. So this is an extreme example, but it's starting to happen all over the watershed. I'm getting emails now about communities that have run dry just recently. Their well that had been pumping for 20 years, and all of a sudden doesn't pump. Literally within days, just the water disappears. So I guess stepping back, what's happening here? Going really far back, 1950s, late 1940s, with the advent of tube well technology, we started drilling for water because we had the technology. We'd go maybe 5 or 10 meters deep before we hit water, and we'd have our well. But as that progressed through the first green revolution in the 70s and onwards, we kept having to go deeper and deeper because we were extracting more water than could be recharged by rain every year. So by the early 2000s, we're not even finding water until maybe 200 meters deep. And today, within the last 3 years, all of the new wells that we've tested that have been drilled within the last maybe 3 to 4 years are over 500 meters deep. So we keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into the substrates, and what we're encountering is older water, fossil water, what we call it. At the very least, that's mixing in with the water that's coming into the community wells. And this water is not just, we're not talking a couple hundred years old or a couple thousand years old, we're talking tens of thousands of years old that's been mixing with different volcanic rocks, and in our case, taking up 2 major metals and minerals, fluoride being the mineral and arsenic being the metal. And so what we started in about 2011, 2012 was testing community groundwater wells throughout the region, just to get a better idea. A lot of people have done this beforehand. Marcos Adriano Ortega, his work about 15, 16 years ago, was the first that really kind of uncovered the evidence of this. And what we started finding, we've tested about 70 community sites, is extremely elevated levels than what Dr. Ortega found 10, 15 years ago. So things are getting worse, and they're getting progressively worse very, very quickly. We've been working with local authorities on various fronts to see what can be done about all of this. And one thing that we've been wanting to understand is what's going on in urban San Miguel, for instance. They've not been very accommodating, so we didn't get much information. So in January, we decided to take it upon ourselves to see what's going on. We had gotten one data set from TOSMA about the urban wells that feed urban San Miguel. There's about 20 of them. And we had seen some things in there that we hadn't seen in our own testing, some elevated levels of fluoride that we had never seen before in our own testing. So we decided, okay, well, why don't we start testing? We obviously don't have access to their well sites, nor will they give us that access. But so we created an urban water quality monitoring program with close to 30 volunteers located at strategic colonias throughout the urban center, just to try to get a gauge of what was going on. And what we found was really surprising to me. I wasn't expecting it. We found arsenic levels more than 5 times the World Health Organization limit within urban colonias right here in San Miguel. That's not just high. I mean, that's some of the highest levels we've seen in the entire watershed region. It's really scary. And those reports we did not see on the SPOSMA results from 2013 that were provided to us. I'm not saying those results are wrong. What I'm saying is that I think things got really bad really quickly. And it's scary to think that the levels may have at least doubled, if not tripled, within just 3 years' time. So I guess going back to the institutional response to all this, I mean, the problem is that it's really a complex issue. 85% of all of our groundwater use goes to agricultural production, at least. And agricultural producers are not the enemy. I really try to make it clear that I'm not trying to demonize. They're all mostly mid-scale producers, but they're the ones that do use the water. And the main issue is that you don't pay. There's a constitutional safeguard that allows agricultural producers to use as much water without paying for it, so they don't pay for water. So there's really little incentive to pump less from a financial perspective. That's further confounded by the system itself on how we monitor concessions, water concessions in the region. There is one entity that has the power to actually fine users for going over their concession, for using more water they're allotted, and that's Conagua. That's the federal water agency. And so within Guanajuato State, Conagua has exactly 7 inspectors to inspect. We'll use the conservative number of 18,000 wells in the state. So you don't have to, just basic arithmetic tells us that, you can't test those wells every month. And on top of that, since agricultural producers aren't paying for their water use, Conagua doesn't really have a whole lot of incentive to inspect agricultural users because there's no financial incentive there. So what they do, is they focus most of their attention on industrial users of water because they do pay for their water use, and that's essentially what pays SPOSMA's bill. That's what pays their employees. So the whole system itself is just really inefficient. But anyway, so essentially what we're doing is we're over-extracting our water. It's 100% overexploited. It's about 75% of the aquifers in the country are the same way, so the national context is not looking great either. With that, the quality of water continues to deteriorate substantially every year, so both the quantity and quality. And I guess I'd just like to end with just a quick anecdote of, just some information, I guess. Last year in 2015, there was a new water law passed, and it's really important. We now actually have 2 water laws that deal with human consumption. One deals with human consumption, the other one deals with human consumption. So what's the difference between these laws? One is about water that's pumped into our homes, and one is about bottled water that we buy in the store. So this law, not to get too much into the details of everything, but essentially the World Health recommendation for arsenic says it shouldn't exceed 10 parts per billion. Mexico's potable water system for the house says it's 25, so more than 2.5 times what the World Health Organization recommends. Now, the bottled water law that came out in 2015 says that it should be 10. So apparently bottled water should be of higher quality than the water we use to cook with, which, by the way, you can't boil arsenic off, you can't boil fluoride off. It stays in your water, so even if you cook with it, you are consuming it. But the really interesting part of this law is with regards to fluoride. Mexico has been on the ball with fluoride for the most part. Since 1994, the human consumption law is 1.5 parts per million. That's what the World Health Organization recommends. I think it's a little bit high, but it's good. But this new 2015 law took it a step further and said, yes, the limit's 1.5, but any sort of bottled product, any sort of ice, any product or service that is sold, if it exceeds 1.5 parts per million fluoride, it has to say on it that this product is not suitable for breastfeeding children, nor children under 7 years of age. So I applaud this law. You know, I don't know the people who pushed this law through, but I'm sure it was a fight, to say the least. But my frustration is with the hypocrisy that's within this law. So essentially what this law is saying is that those who can afford to buy water have a right to know what's in it. But those who can't, the most marginalized and vulnerable communities that we work with, don't have that same right. And so my question is, you know, why? And why do I have to have access to, you know, a field water laboratory to know that the water that comes into my house, you know, my 17-month-old daughter shouldn't be drinking? It's not apt for her consumption. Not everybody else has that advantage. And so that's my main concern here, is why do we make a point that anybody who can afford to buy bottled water has a right to know, but then the people who don't are kind of left in the wind. And you know, we're dealing with levels that are far higher than that, you know, upwards of 15 times that. And these are people that have no idea what's going on. Nobody's ever told them. And I'll tell you, I can say almost unequivocally, nearly every single community we've ever been to, somebody has said that there has been water testing done, and nobody's ever come back to tell them what has happened. So my issue is more with informing people. If at the very least you can't comply to your own laws, you have a responsibility to let people know what's going on. And that's something that is greatly lacking within the government right now. And people are just drinking contaminated water and nobody knows it. And it's really, really unfortunate. But so again, I mean, we work more on the water quality monitoring side of things, and really developing technology is what we do. We're more the technical side of things, so we develop different systems, filtration media, and things like that. We're developing 2 filtration medias right now that specifically target arsenic and fluoride, but we also do things with rainwater catchment. But I guess I'll just leave it there for now.
So we've seen some of the great aspects that bring people into San Miguel, like our Saturday market and the growing organization that Miguel works with. Somebody told me this past week that TripAdvisor named San Miguel the #1 place to visit in Latin America and the 3rd most attractive place to visit in the world. So there's going to be an ongoing influx of visitors into this community, and Dylan's talk really addresses the fact that there's going to be tremendous pressures within this community to both keep those people coming in here for the money that it brings to the community, but the danger of doing that within a water system that's abused. And I think as people of this community, it's very important that we become aware of that. So let's go ahead and open this up for discussion. Please keep your comments fairly short. We have probably about half an hour to 45 minutes to work with, and I'll throw it open to the floor. Yes?
Before I forget, because I'm 75 and I've been here 31 years, this has always been a problem. And if you look at the huge corporations who control the bottle of water, you work with them. As far as he's concerned, in our little community, we had babysitting chits in Washington. And it was a piece of paper, and each chit was an hour. And we traded within our community child care with these chits. Period.
Yeah, that's great.
So, Dylan, what can we do? What can the consumer do?
¿Quisiera en español? No? Sí? Porque hay gente que no practica en inglés.
I think everyone here
No?
speaks English.
Bueno.
Can you be more specific?
Well, I mean, just the normal consumer. Is there something that they can do to put pressure on the government to fix their own house?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a good point. So I guess taking it from like the individual to the higher scale, like on an individual level, I think it's really important to know that Arsenic, but specifically fluoride, are some of the hardest ions to get out of the water. So anybody who has a water filtration system in your home, a lot of people have those home systems. I can almost guarantee you that it's not removing arsenic and fluoride, despite what other people might tell you. Those are traditionally activated carbon, UV, sediment filters, none of which removes any sort of dissolved ions like arsenic or fluoride, inorganic contaminants. So we have our water quality maps online, so I urge people to just go to our website, check out the maps, see if where you live individually might be a problem, and if so, I don't recommend you buy bottled water. They're a big part of the problem. Coca-Cola has more right to our aquifers than every other person in this country combined. And they're extracting that water and bottling it in the form of CL, Century, things like that. So I would really recommend, the best option always is to collect rainwater, I think. It's the most sustainable because you're not reliant on ever-depleting groundwater. But at least a short-term option is reverse osmosis. You can get that at any hardware store. It costs a few thousand pesos. It's not suitable for the communities we work with, unfortunately, but for any sort of middle-income person, it's a really affordable solution. It's the only one that will deal with those contaminants. And just to finish your question on the higher level, I don't know, I think that requires a conversation with a lot of people to figure out how to put pressure on. We've been working, we continue and will continue to work with the Health Secretary, TOSMA, Agua, in the capacity that we can, but response is always to not panic, but more, I don't know. It's just a working process on the governmental side. So
yes.
Since tourism is one of your highest productive, bringing in your gross national product, then I would think that you can lean on the tour industry because this is what's going to be impacted. And it's like we're tourists right now. The four of us, we come from California, and one of our things is like don't drink the water, buy bottled water. Now I don't know what we had breakfast this morning, and I don't know how the gal says, well, this has been disinfected, but well, to what extreme is it, and does it take out the arsenic and the things that are detrimental to our health?
No. So just to the problem with water quality is it's very complex. And as we always says, anybody asks me a water quality question, I always say, well, it's complex and it depends.
But how is the tourism? How does that industry, a lot of your stuff is dependent on the tourists that come in here. I mean, it impacts them. Don't they get kind of panicky about that?
They don't know.
I spent a lot of time. I mean, one thing I'll say to that is that there's been 3 letters now written just in the past weeks to the UNESCO World Heritage Foundation asking to revoke San Miguel's status because of the violations of ecological violations were all down water.
It's wonderful here. That's why we're here. And we're spending our money. I don't want to go home ill.
Can you explain reverse osmosis?
Well,
hold on.
Hun, you're doing it again.
I'm sorry.
Let me be the moderator, and I'll try to get to everybody in the room, and then we'll come back to you.
I wanted to ask Dylan, since he mentioned arsenic and fluoride. I know people in the Campo often have teeth deterioration, but could you talk about some of the ill effects of having those in the water?
Yeah, so the unfortunate effect of fluoride is that it has this really nasty tendency to make itself very visible very quickly, especially in children under 7 years old. It affects the developmental capabilities of children at that age too. What fluoride does is it binds really well with calcium. And so that's why we've been told our lives in the US at least that fluoride is great for us. A topical solution of fluoride at a very specific concentration does show benefits to lower cavities and things like that. But at really high concentrations of actually consuming fluoride in the water, like we're doing here we're talking much higher levels, it continues to bind with the calcium and it starts to deteriorate. So what people see in the Campo all the time here are children with teeth completely brown, completely blackened, teeth literally breaking in half and falling off. And that's really the first sign, it's called dental fluorosis. That's the surface, the visible. That's also attacking your bones as well, so that turns into things like crippling skeletal fluorosis past certain concentrations. So we have story after story of broken bones, a woman breaking her femur just walking down the street when she was 22 years old, I think. was diagnosed with early onset osteoporosis because they didn't know what else she could possibly have that would break the hardest bone in her body from such a light fall. And then it gets into your brain. The pineal gland is a big calcium deposit. I won't pretend to say that we know what that does, but we just know that it accumulates there. There hasn't been enough scientific research to really say what impact that has, but we do see issues with learning, with just learning in general on a youth level in the community. So.
And what about the arsenic?
Arsenic is even nastier. There's no health benefit to arsenic. It's a carcinogen, and so not to scare everybody. I mean, at least on the arsenic front, you have to consume that water for decades to really show effects. But as it gets more and more concentrated, you have to consume it less and less to have the effects. But it's tied to all sorts of skin disorders, but more specifically to organ failure and various different kinds of cancers. And that's really well documented scientifically.
Anybody have any questions directed for Yolanda or Miguel?
I do.
Yes.
Yolanda, ¿dónde encuentra el conocimiento estas mujeres? Cuando ellos pueden notar que necesita algo más para sus conocimientos, ¿dónde encuentran?
A través del Tiangus TOSMA, porque se va pasando la voz, y en las oficinas de Global Justice, ahí nos contactan.
Y los talleres, the workshops, right?
Sí, talleres.
¿Los talleres son común o ustedes fabrican?
¿Nosotros fabricamos? No entendí. Yo ya tengo elaborado un sistema de enseñanza. Entonces hay ejemplos, ejercicios y además les doy por escrito lo que es el cooperativismo, todo lo relacionado con eso, y bajo eso ya empezamos a trabajar cada grupo según sus necesidades, pero lo básico lo reciben todos.
Can we get a translation on that of some sort?
If osmosis systems are so...
Well, so just to translate that, so the question is where do women go and how does the system work? And so she was saying that she has a whole system design, a whole teaching system design with different exercises and examples and things like that every single group gets exposed to that system of teaching, that teaching system.
Another question for Miguel. Miguel, you said there were points that people could go for the exchanges. There were physical locations, is that correct?
Well, right now we have only one, which is in TOSMA. And we as a group, as collective, we as the Amanatli collective, we are going the last Saturday of every month. But this is temporary because we are going there to teach people how to do it. But once they know it, once the project is working, we're going to move to a different point to start the exercise, and we're gonna be doing this many times to create many points. But right now we have only one point.
And how do they assign the value?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We start with the first day we went through this exercise. We check all the products every person was bringing to exchange, and we decided that the cheapest product was a glass of aguamiel. Aguamiel it's like a kind of juice that comes from a cactus, and the price of this glass of aguamiel in pesos is 5 pesos. So we decided, well, this is the cheapest product we have. This is gonna be our reference. This is one glass of aguamiel is gonna be one amanatli. Amanatli is the name of the currency. But this is only a reference because we don't want to keep a link between amanatlis and pesos, because we want to avoid the variations. We want to avoid being affected by the variations of peso or dollar. But this is it's only a reference. at the beginning, this is difficult because everybody wants to assign, wants to put a number to the products. But as soon as the exercise develops, it becomes not that important. Because if you want, for example, if you have 1 kilogram of corn and other person has 1 kilogram of beans, they can exchange it directly without reviewing the price in Walmart. You want beans and I have corn, we can just exchange it. We are using these values, but they are not fixed. In some point, they are imaginary. Because in our system, with pesos or dollars, who decides the price? It's imaginary too. And the prices are moving every day. And we don't decide. What we are trying to do is to keep the prices or the values fixed. We are not trying to increase. What we are mainly fostering is the direct exchange.
If I understood you correctly, you were saying that osmosis systems are very reasonable to get. And if that is so, and we're encouraging individuals to get osmosis systems in their home, isn't there a way that businesses, i.e. restaurants, can be encouraged to get osmosis systems instead of encouraging patrons to buy or bottled water?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can only handle what we can handle as an organization, so part of my goal is to get this information out there so other people take on different aspects of the work. You know, what we do is we try to develop low-tech systems because the majority of the people that we work with can't afford osmosis, and it's not the best solution anyway in the long run, but you know, that's why I'm here, is to find other people who would look into things like that. We just don't have the resources to do that ourselves.
One reason for my comment is that I live in Sacramento, California, but we do live on the edge of a aerojet, which creates the satellites, helps to create the motor systems for the satellites. So our groundwater has been affected because our water comes from it. So in our home, we not only have a regular filter system, but an osmosis system. So, and once it's put in, it's really not that expensive to operate. No. The initial cost is kind of expensive, but after that, no.
It also uses a lot of water to make the water.
No, ours doesn't.
Oh, mine does. I have a reverse osmosis system, and that's not, it's a costly, using water.
One of the things that Dylan commented on, which I'll just say very briefly, is a problem for the over 100 organizations in San Miguel that are working to improve the conditions and situation here, not just expat organizations, but local organizations that are peopled by the local people of San Miguel, is that with this 100 organizations, it is tremendously difficult to both find the people to keep your organization running in a healthy manner and the money to make your organizations continue on into the future. So that's one of the things that I would love to see in the future in San Miguel, is more of an umbrella organization that can start to focus every year on some of the issues that are coming up, like we're discussing today, and use the collective people and monetary uses that we have coming into these groups, and have that collective umbrella organization be the guiding hand for how we allocate people and money. James, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about other technologies like solar distillation, maybe, or a large, medium or large scale water catchment projects and that sort of thing as alternatives.
Yeah, the main thing that we work on with the communities we work with is water catchment, rainwater harvesting. So we've come up with several different designs and filtration systems for biological issues that happen with rainwater. But that's our main goal, is catchment systems. We think it's the best we have right now. This year we might be starting the research on a more efficient solar distillation system as well. The current models are just not efficient enough. They don't produce enough water. And if they can't produce enough water here, they definitely can't produce it anywhere else because we have lots of sun here. But so we're working on that. But as it stands right now, what you need, the energy you need from the sun to get to that extra point, we haven't been able to design the system that is cheaper than just harvesting rainwater right now.
I have a question for Yolanda and Miguel both, because you're trying to attract people to a very different way of thinking, right? I mean, it's extremely different. It's like 180 degrees different from the way everyone's been raised. So how do you attract people into your systems?
¿Cómo atraemos la gente a los sistemas que estamos proponiendo cuando estos sistemas son tan diferentes a los sistemas establecidos?
Bueno, básicamente en el TOSMA los compañeros que están produciendo algo no tienen dónde vender. Entonces TOSMA es una sombrilla que invita a los productores directamente que puedan vender ahí sus productos. Los precios ellos lo dan. Hay una serie de reglamentos que todos tenemos que seguir, respetando por supuesto los horarios, en fin, muchas cosas. En las comunidades, los grupos comunitarios, se les invita a que puedan conocer el sistema cooperativista para que aprendan a organizarse. Muchos sí aceptan eso, y el conocer este sistema es algo importante para nosotros, para que la gente aprenda a organizarse, a trabajar juntos. Ahora, en el Tianguis estamos varios organizaciones civiles, productores, en fin, y para nosotros también es muy importante la participación del Multitrueque, porque entre los mismos expositores empezamos a conocer esto y a participar. Difícil no es la misma necesidad que todos tenemos que nos lleva a poder estar en un lugar, participar, a vender y aprender, en este caso el multitrueque, la moneda, en fin. La gente va llegando, se va pasando la voz. Sí,
in the case of in the TOSMA, one way to attract people is by creating this space. Without TOSMA, the people who's selling there, or many of them wouldn't have, without the TOSMA, they wouldn't have an option to sell or to offer the products to the community. So one way to attract people to this kind of system is to create the spaces where they can sell or exchange. In the case of the Amanatli collective, it is the same. We attract people by doing, because we can talk a lot, but if we don't do something, we're not attracting people. And by assisting to this kind of places where people want to hear something about something different, it's difficult, but it's an educational project. Both, it's by speaking, by telling your neighbor, not just in these spaces, but by telling your friends, your neighbors, everybody you know, telling that there's a different option.
¿Hay espacios como para los consumidores que no tienen puestos ahí en la tienda para participar como en el Multitrueque, por ejemplo, o algo así?
About the Multitrueque, we are open to exchange products with everybody, products and services. Because maybe you are not producing an object, but maybe you can teach French or maths or something. So you can exchange knowledge for a product. And we're open to do direct exchange with everybody. But if you want to participate using the solidarity currency, you need to take a kind of workshop and understand the rules of the currency, and then you will be accepted as part of this network. But if you don't want to be part of the network or use the currency, you can take your stuff, your products, or your knowledge and make direct exchange.
Are they going to build a hotel where TOSMA? ¿Van a construir un hotel por el lugar donde está TOSMA ahora?
No sabemos.
Están hablando de un Hilton o algo así,
Sí,
¿verdad?
no, este es solamente el terreno, no sabemos ni qué va a hacer en ese lugar. No, sí, porque es una propiedad privada.
Ah, sí.
Entonces, no,
¿Quién sabe?
no sabemos qué vaya a hacer en ese lugar.
Liz?
I don't even know where to start. On the question of water, I mean, it's seems that to actually address that problem in any fundamental way also requires a different way of relating and different ways of thinking, than we have. And like Peter was saying, a broad campaign. And I was thinking about the case of Flint, where they were using polluted river water, and they found one of the things that came up there was that Nestle has access to not only aquifer, but good aquifers free of charge in Michigan. So I mean, this is such a global problem, and it seems to be extreme in various spots. And so I'm just wondering how people are moving. Is there a move here, like Peter's saying, to try to get together a more broad strategy? Do you know if that's happening other places?
Yeah, there's a few coalitions on various different levels that are working in the region, but I mean, movement it's always stifled a bit. So I guess one thing that we're trying to do is just provide the information. So for us, it was really strategic to focus on urban San Miguel. Like we live here, but there's also several other cities throughout the watershed region that we could have done the same study. But San Miguel has political clout. I mean, it's a huge tourist destination, and so our hope was if we did discover anything with the urban center, any issues with water quality, that that might raise some bells somewhere. And so our goal is not really to be ringing the bells, but to provide the information. And so what we're trying to do now, for instance, with that information is to get it accredited by a university. So we'll be working, we've got several different university partners to have them come down and actually confirm the results in their accredited laboratories. And we make all of that information 100% public. All of everything from the technologies we develop, the processes we use, to what we uncover in any given area is always 100% public. And our goal is that could be a tool. If we have an accredited study that says the water quality in urban San Miguel is decreasing rapidly, hopefully somebody could use that as a battle cry, or it's just a tool to push a movement like that forward. But a strong, really coordinated movement is not really.
I have a second question. Your first example of a community that is well has just recently dried up, and your work also is like helping develop, installing alternative technologies. What will it take, or is it going to take to do something with that village, for example?
We've been able to install rainwater harvesting systems in their elementary school, their kindergarten, and their church. And right now we're doing 10 to 15 community homes. There's about 80 families in total, so everybody needs one, or several, potentially. But so, that's just, for us, is funding dependent, and that's where the majority of our funding goes to the development of these systems and the implementation in the communities. And so everything else with the information we gather is more as a tool for others to use, we hope, or to at least participate with others in using that information. But our main goal is making that impact as much as we possibly can. That's just
Before we wrap up, and we do have some time, and you're going to be next. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind people that the price for coming today is 60 pesos, and if you haven't gotten a ticket, please get it out at the entrance to the biblioteca. It goes to keeping this program alive so we can continue to disseminate information, and it goes to the biblioteca to keep its doors open so that we can have a space to meet and talk about these issues. Yes?
Para usar in order to use the solar power system what is happening with CFAA. The electric company has to be cooperating for the solar power for good water. What is happening?
I'm sorry, I don't follow. What's the solar power?
The electric company must cooperate if you're going to have solar power for clean water. What's happening with the electric company to cooperate because they're making lots of money?
I don't know. I mean, we don't use solar. We don't use any energy for the technology we develop. We purposely make sure, solar power or not, that we don't use any electrical input, any energy input, just because the majority of the communities we work with don't have consistent energy. So
if you use it, they don't make money.
Yeah, I don't know. It's out of my wheelhouse.
It's a cycle.
Any other questions for anybody? Anything anybody would like to say?
Thank you.
In addition?
Can you guys write your, or give us your websites? Can you give us your website?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
So we can look up some information?
Yeah, ours is caminosdeagua.org.
I have a final comment about the water flow problem. It's, I think the problem is not if we have the money or not to buy devices to clean the water. It's more related with, we need to look at the root cause. We need to see that our lifestyle is causing the problem. So if we want to solve the problem from the root, we need to change, we need to analyze our lifestyle and see what can I change. The way I live, the way I buy stuff, the way I enjoy. For example, here in San Miguel, we have golf camps, and they need the golf fields,
Golf course.
golf courses. So we have a big problem with water, but we have golf courses. It's illogical. But if I'm worried about the water problem and I'm going to play golf, I'm not against golf, of course, but I'm saying this is, for me it's crazy to have golf courses in a place where we have those serious problems with water. So let's analyze our lifestyle.